Hey class, Dr. Stevens here. Just wanted to post a video comment on the triangulation discussion. Had a lot of interesting responses there. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I suspect that's probably a topic that most of you have never really considered before. A couple of you noted that you had actually had some experience with that, so I was pleased to hear that. Quite a wide variety of answers there, and most of them are pretty close to at least touching on a part of what triangulation is about, and that's great. I wasn't expecting a perfect answer there. A couple of you mentioned that triangulation involves using multiple methods to collect data, and that certainly is a possibility, although that doesn't necessarily have to be true. In fact, in many studies, there's a deliberate effort not to use multiple methods to collect the data, because then each one of those methods has to be described in the methods section of the report, and the researcher has to justify the use of those methods and how they correlate to one another, and how it would serve the purpose of improving validity, and that's usually a really big and difficult task. And so oftentimes one single method is used simply to keep it manageable. But you could use multiple methods, and that would add some validity to those results. Now, from my perspective, triangulation is more on the back end of the research in terms of analyzing the responses that you get from your survey or from your interviews or whatever method you're using. So here's an example. I'm just making this up as I go along here. Let's say that you're interviewing people that have just come out of a Steelers and a Patriots game, and you're trying to get their impressions of what that game was, to get some fan response so that you can write a report on it, although that seems like a silly topic. But so you ask one guy, so what did you think of the game? And he says, oh man, it was so cold, but we had a great time. Steelers played great, but their defense was not able to hold off the Patriots, and I'm a Steelers fan, but it was a great game, and we'll get them next year. And then the next person comes along and you ask them, so what did you think of the game? And they say, well, I'm glad the Patriots won. It was awesome. Their offense was incredible. Steelers put up a good fight. I enjoyed it. My wife spent the whole time in the bathroom because she was so cold and freezing that she just couldn't stand it. But me and my son, we had a great time. And then you ask this question of multiple people, and you get all these different answers. But as you go back and you analyze the comments, regardless of whether a Patriots fan or a Steelers fan, or you thought the offense or defense played great or whatever, you start finding out that everybody noted that it was cold, and that that had an effect of some kind. Well, so you might not have been actually looking to identify or address anything about the weather, the temperature or whatever, but that is a topic that emerged out of the actual responses. And so by triangulating and sort of overlaying the various comments, you start finding commonalities among the responses, and those become the emerging topics. Now, it might not necessarily be relevant, but it could be. And so in this particular case, if you're trying to write an interesting article or a report about the nature of an NFL game and so on, you might find out that the fan interaction is affected by the weather. That could become an important thing. And that's the thing about qualitative research, is you don't always know going in what is going to become important and what you're going to learn. And so it's more of an emergent research method, and triangulation helps you find those emerging themes that come out, and then you use your analysis and your experience and your literature review and all those other resources that you have to bear on the actual analysis of those responses, and you determine as a researcher whether or not those emerging various components end up being important enough to report upon. Now, in my experience, in my dissertation, I interviewed 20 people to ask them about their experiences in a certain working relationship. I won't go into details about that, but as I interviewed them and reviewed the responses, a couple of things that came out were a great mutual respect for one another in terms of their expertise and their background and their diligence. Another one was how important communication was. And there were 2 or 3 emerging themes that became very relevant. And I assumed going in that communication probably would be important. But some of those other emerging themes that came out were things that I would not have ever considered. And so by triangulating responses, and admittedly my sample size was very small, only 20 participants, but in a qualitative research you can get away with that. But I was able, by sort of overlaying and finding matching comments, certain themes emerged. So those are examples of how triangulation can be beneficial in a qualitative search. So I hope that was helpful, and I'm making this video because I truly doubt that anybody's going to go back and read anything that I might post in an old discussion. So I hope that this has been helpful.